what is the difference between these two forms? Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and recently I did a video where I talked about how your next of kin can get your DD214, and I try to encourage service members to make sure that their spouse and kids have a copy of this important form. One of the points that came up in that video was the fact that there are multiple versions of the DD214, and for the veteran and their family, the two most important are called Member 1 and Member 4. But why are there two, and what's the difference? Well, before I explain why, let me point out that there are a whole host of different ways that these two different versions are described. You'll hear them called the short version or the long version. Sometimes they're called the deleted version or the undeleted version, or the edited and the unedited version. You'll even hear them called the redacted or the unredacted version. This should give you a sense of what's going on. There are a couple of pieces of information on that DD214 that a veteran might not want the world to know. In particular, this includes the characterization of service, the reason for separation, and the separation authority. You see, that characterization of service includes the range from honorable to general under honorable conditions, down to other than honorable and bad conduct, all the way down to dishonorable. It's not exactly the kind of information that some vets may want to be waving around. What's more, and this is particularly true if you take a long view of the military and the ways it's evolved over the decades, the reasons for separation, well, they can get pretty personal. Homosexuality, medical disability, conscientious objection, bedwetter, anxiety, or obesity. You've even got paranoid personality, which I'm not sure requires a medical diagnosis, or my personal favorite, unfit for multiple reasons. Hopefully, it should be pretty clear why a veteran might want a version of their DD214 that doesn't air their dirty laundry. Thus, the short version, the so-called Member 1, edits out or redacts that information. But it has not always been this way. Prior to 1974, the DD214 only came in the long form, and what's more, the public, particularly employers, were able to get access to this information on their own. That meant that somebody who was discharged for something like, alcohol rehabilitation failure, well, they might experience a lifetime of employment disadvantage just because of this one sheet of paper. And so, Member 1, the redacted version, was created. But so what? Well, I argue that this matters in a couple of different ways depending on your own personal situation. First off, if you are one of those pre-1974 guys and you don't have a redacted version of your DD214, you might want to get one. Although, to be honest, the damage has likely been done over the last 50 years. Plus, at this point, the main reason that you probably want your DD214 is to prove that you're eligible for certain VA benefits. And in order to do that, you're going to have to prove that you weren't dishonorably discharged, so you're going to end up needing the long form anyways. But if you do want a short version, you can request one from the National Archives simply by asking for a deleted version. Second, if you're a modern soldier and you got out under honorable conditions with a fairly normal reason for separation, well, this probably doesn't matter to you at all. So this whole discussion of Member 1 versus Member 4, it's kind of pointless noise because you're happy showing people the long version regardless. And then finally, if you are one of these, modern soldiers who has a separation reason that's kind of embarrassing, like sexual perversion, well, you might run into a catch-22 anyways. If somebody asks for your DD214 and you give them the short version, they're going to kind of assume that there's something on the long version that you don't want to share. And thus, you can end up suffering the same discrimination that you would have if the short version didn't exist. I don't 100% know how to advise you to deal with a situation like this, but you might want to think about what exactly are they trying to verify when they ask for your DD214, and to what extent do they have a right to that information? I mean, if all they want to do is know when you served, well, the short version is just fine. But if you're applying for government jobs, even at the state or local level, you should expect that they're going to want the long version of your DD214, and if you're not willing to share that, well, you might save yourself some time and not even apply. Plus, a lot of licensing authorities like nursing or medicine or the bar examiners, well, they're probably going to want a copy of your DD214 in order to issue you a license. With that in mind, if you do have, bad paper, you might want to think twice about spending the time getting educated for a profession if you're going to run into problems when you finally try to get licensed. At the end of the day, it can be kind of surprising the degree to which your military experience shapes the rest of your life. It can have impacts on such simple things as your facial expressions or the ways you deal with common problems. And if you want to see what I'm talking about, watch one of these videos.